High School DXD Hero. It sucks, and we're gonna talk about it because, as far as I'm concerned, this is the worst anime of the year. And I know that may seem like a weird thing to say considering this was a goofy, ecchi comedy, and trust me, saying that this is the season that shit the bed is still something I can't believe. But we're going to talk about this show today. And you know what? We're going to be all smart and official. We're dividing this thing up into segments because I honestly have no clue how to talk about this show with any other parameters than just separating myself so this just doesn't turn into me yelling fuck for 10 minutes. So without further ado, let's get started with Part 1, The Studio. So, as many people probably could tell, High School DxD Hero was done by a different studio. This is the first nail in the coffin and one of the biggest. You see, High School DxD is not the norm when it comes to ecchi anime. Most ecchi anime are generic, only focusing on boobs, and kind of uninteresting. High School DxD, having the combination of charm and likability it has, came from having a very specific crew who had a very specific vision and clearly had a lot of fun executing that vision. With a new studio and a new team, you now have two choices. Either one, you can simply try and soullessly replicate it, or two, you can try and do your own thing. Neither of these options are particularly put into motion, and because of this, you have a crew who clearly don't understand the show they're making or the people who like it. And you're going to see that that is a big thing that keeps coming up with every other problem of this season. Part 2. The animation. So I bet some of you are expecting me to say that I hate the animation because it's different. No, I hate it because it's bad. Now don't get me wrong, the first 3 seasons of DxD clearly don't have a huge budget, and what budget is there mostly goes to opie physics. But the difference between those seasons' animation and this season's animation is those seasons tried to be clever with it and do what they could when they could. Like for instance, the use of the bright color palette was a great way for distinguishing location. They used simple tricks like making some scenes darker and some scenes brighter to indicate when we were in the normal world versus the demon world. In the new series, pretty much everything looks the same. Everything has that bright, friendly color to it, and it really doesn't do anything for giving you an idea of tone or setting, and even the designs of everywhere sucks. Like, we spend a fair amount of time this season in the demon world, and the demon world just looks like the normal world. There's no difference between the two. There's no attempt to show you any culture or what makes one different from the other. It's just there. And that's kind of what I can assume for everything. Everything in the season just looks more generic, and even though, yes, in some ways it's a little bit more consistent, I'd much prefer the other seasons having the bigger impact when it counts. And that's doesn't really happen here. Apart from a couple better facial expressions Issei gives off, there's nothing that makes this animation unique, and it sucks. Also, if we're just talking fan service, and this is more personal, when it comes to showing off big titties and just feminine bodies, I'd rather we get the more lush, detailed animation that has the brighter color palette and the more saturated look to it than this newer style. That may be personal, but I have a feeling a lot of people agree with me. Part 3, the character designs. So I know some of you may be saying, shouldn't this be with animation? Well, I personally believe that the character designs in this show deserve to be their own category because the character design changes in this season are not just bad, they're also mind-bogglingly strange. This should have been the one where you're just just copy the ideas from last time. But no, they feel this weird desire to simplify and make everyone more generic in a show that already had pretty simplistic character designs. The problem with simplifying these designs is that in the original series, everyone had a different body style, everyone had a very distinctive look to them. This was done for 2 purposes. A, it made sure everyone's fetishes were covered, and also 2, they did a pretty good job of actually integrating everyone's design into their personality. And it really was cool. You could have characters like Rias who are supposed to be more leader-like, motherly, and they could sort of have that look to them. You could have Best Girl Asya have this very innocent, kind-hearted, pure look, Or you could have like Zenobia be very sort of almost like tomboy, like muscly, that kind of look. But then for Hero, they just kind of take all this away and just make them all generic moe waifu blobs. Rias has now been aged down, which kind of takes away from the maturity element of her. Asia now just looks like every big boob, tall model bombshell type, and Zenobia doesn't even look like the same character anymore. These changes kind of take away your ability to have the characters leave an impact on you, as now they go from looking like themselves to everything else in anime. And that's a really shitty point. Also, the guys have pretty bad redesigns too. Issei looks basically the same, but like Riser, Kiba, they're all kind of given these weird, almost sort of like almost like they're made to look like they're part of the harem. It was really weird and distracting, and it really killed some very great character moments. And speaking of character moments, part 4, the personality. So by far, my personal favorite thing of High School DxD is just the chemistry between the cast. Yeah, I love just watching these characters bounce off each other and have fun with each other and go on adventures with each other and have issues with each other. It really is a character-driven story. And High School DxD Hero decides to just throw all that in the bin, and I don't know why. You think that would be the easiest thing. You could only just write their personalities on a paper, and they don't even bother with that. First and foremost, for the first arc, they elect to separate everyone, split them into 2 groups. This is a problem immediately, but it's made worse because the group with Issei, they don't do anything. The entire first arc of this is essentially just Issei and his sidekicks, and that's no fun. I like watching everyone be with each other, but if all you're gonna do is just have everyone gawk at how cool Issei is, and like just do whatever he tells them, then what's the point? He might as well have Transformers with him. No one does anything. Meanwhile, you have Rias and her group who also just kind of do nothing. Like, they just kind of meander for 6 episodes to waste screen time, and Gasper's not even in it. It's real bad. They try and fix this with the next arc that is sort of gives everyone a character moment, but the damage is done, and the character moments they give them are just baseline generic. Like, nothing that made the characters likable or charming are here, and it really just makes me sad. But if I had to pick the one thing above all else, ignoring the animation, the studio changes, the redesigns, the personalities, if I had to pick the one thing that really ruined this season for a lot of people, it is Part 5, the story. So, yeah, this is by far the worst part of High School DxD Hero. And it's, you know what, before we cast more shade, let's take a minute to appreciate the balls the people who made this season had to have to do what they did to the story of this show. You see, lots of shows take a nosedive after a certain point. Lots of shows basically screw up and go wrong, and you're sitting there wondering, wait, when did this happen? No, High School DxD Hero decides to basically tell you from the minute it starts that it is going to just shit all over everything and just be horrible. Because guess what they decided to do? They, for whatever strange reason, decided to do a episode 0 that proceeds to retcon the last few episodes of season 3. Why did they do this? Why would you not try and keep the fan base on your good graces? I have no fucking idea. But this season 0 episode successfully tells you everything you're in store for. Because the season 0 episode takes away all the drama, the intensity, the just lovability of the situation they put those characters in to end that season, and proceeds to just turn it into a big, not funny joke. And that basically is the biggest problem. It alienates everybody because it tells fans who loved the first 3 seasons and really got into it, you don't matter anymore. We are changing things for reasons that we probably don't even understand ourselves. and that stays throughout the series. Nothing in this season is ever done to really like capture anyone's attention. You get these two generic arcs. First, the generic let's go to Kyoto and have a magical adventure arc that every anime does. And yeah, some may argue that, well, this season tried to make Issei more of a hero. That's why they split everyone up. Well, that didn't really come into play at all. And then you have this generic tournament arc that is every generic tournament arc in a shonen, and it's nothing. And like that's really what I say about High School DxD Hero. At worst, it's horrendous. At best, it's nothing. And honestly, that's what makes this the worst anime of the year for me. Because it's not just the fact that it's bad on its own, because it is, but it's one of those things where you look at it and it kind of makes you wonder what you liked about the rest of the franchise in the first place. Because they are so blatantly trying to copy and just ride the coattails of the previous seasons, but they never actually figure out why those seasons succeeded, so they just kind of just do every generic crap fest there is, and that's not what made High School DxD lovable. High School DxD was lovable because it had this very simple story that you think you've seen a million times, but they execute it with charm and personality and try to make it work to the fullest of their ability, and that's what makes it lovable. It was very clearly made by a passionate crew who were just having fun and got really into it and wanted to share that with everybody. And that's not here. High School DxD has gone the route of the corporate-controlled, passionless, just generic franchise, and I can't believe I'm saying this about a fucking ecchi comedy. But here it is. High School DxD Hero, the worst anime of the year because it actually shits on a really good anime, and oh lord, I will never get over that. But tell me what you thought in the comments section below. Maybe you were fine with Hero. I don't know how, but if you were, please tell me. I'd love to hear about that. And as always, click to like, click to subscribe, and join me as we find something more happy to talk about.